Is everybody okay?
They're tired because of the game last
They're
night.
tired
Yeah.
because of the game. I woke up to that news this morning. What? We won. How about that? Good morning. Good to see you. I did not mean to play a bait and switch or anything like that this morning. We are going to have a guest presentation. And somewhere in the middle of our week, we went from it being a brief portion of our time together this morning to be the major portion of our time together this morning. And so just a second, I will turn things over. I don't know either how many turn right away to back pages of the worship folder and check out announcements, or how many in our early service were surprised when I got to the prayer this morning. And prayed that God would bless a call, decision, and deliberation. So if you haven't been in church yet, or you haven't turned to those back pages, I did receive a call from a church in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, and I got the phone call at 8:15 approximately Thursday night. Glanced at the cell phone and the caller ID, and it said Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, and I thought, well, Wisconsin, I should probably answer this phone call. In other words, had some inkling that that might be what this phone call was in regards to, and it certainly was the case. And so to be a second pastor at that congregation, the guy who's currently there has a lead pastor, head pastor, administrative pastor position, and they're terming it an outreach pastor. Outreach is a big part of what they're asking for, but also some pretty strong involvement in youth ministry outside of the school. So they do have a school that used to be quite a large school. It's a little bit smaller now. They're building it up. Again, it is a large congregation, as in on the official total is something like 815 members currently. Fort Atkinson is not a very large town, but there's also a Wells Church of a comparable size 5 minutes away on the other side of town. So just a few things that I've learned. We'll kind of play it by ear this week. Holly's going to talk to us about this experience regarding Truth and Love Ministries and a chance to reach out and witness to Mormons. Next week with our ALA Sunday, we're going to give our ALA presenters a chance to talk to you about that particular ministry and the things that are going on with them. And so the plan is to start a new lesson, a new lie about God the following week. So, like I said, not meaning to get you here today, expecting something different and change it all up, but this is kind of where we're at this morning. So I'm going to turn it over now to our outreach coordinator for Grace Tucson, Holly Vaden, and she's going to share with you some more things.
Thank you, Pastor. I am really, really happy to finally be able to do this presentation. When I came back from experiencing this, I was all set to I would like to share this with everybody. I even had some congregational members that came up to me and asked me if I would be doing a presentation. It took a while for this to happen. I mean, obviously that was June, and here we are in November. And a little delay. Well, part of that was due to the fact that this year, Truth and Love Ministries decided they would put together a PowerPoint that attendees would be able to utilize to do this presentation. I didn't get that until the end of August. And then, of course, we had everyone outreach and Spawn Purple Fest and pastors' conferences. And so this was really the first opportunity that I could get to share this with you. As Nancy and Lois are putting out the handouts for you, a couple things I want to ask. First off, please, I'm asking you to be very kind to me, and not ask questions until the very end. Unlike Pastor Kozolke, who talks about us, dragging him into the rabbit hole. If you guys drag me into the rabbit hole, we'll never get back out. So if you could just wait till the very end, I'd appreciate that. I have a question, another question too. Has anyone ever had the opportunity to go and participate in the At the Door program with Truth and Love Ministries? Nobody. Alrighty, well then great. I'm really even more excited about sharing this. So it's called At the Door because obviously we're going to be knocking on doors. They have this program running in June, the first 2 weeks of June. I was there June 4th through the 11th. We had 40 people that attended that week. 20 of those were adults, 20 teenagers. Ages ran anywhere from 16 to people who were in their mid-70s to late 70s. There were a few people that actually have come more than once. This is something they really love to do, and so they come more than they've come a few times. We had people from Wisconsin, Michigan, Nebraska, Florida, Arizona, Utah, and Idaho. So for those of you who may not know much about Truth and Love Ministries, it was actually developed by Pastor Mark Cares. When he took his call to Nampa, Idaho, he quickly found out that he was surrounded by Mormons. So how is he going to go about growing his church there? And in contacting and being in contact with the Mormon population around the church, he found himself more often than not in a debate. And so as time evolved, he started looking and realizing that these people are actually victims. They're on a really sad path to damnation in the disguise of what they believe to be Christianity. It's a very sad thing. So when he took that, this kind of focused on that, he came up with a different approach. He really tried to reach out to them with a lot of patience and with a lot of love and understanding. So that's how Truth and Love really kind of came about. You can also see up there, it says, Be Ye Perfect. Be Ye Perfect is a website that was created once Pastor John Leach, he joined Pastor Mark Cares a few years ago, and then Pastor Mark Parsons came on board after that. And so they developed this website. This website specifically is for Mormons who are questioning their faith and starting to see what's out there that's a little bit different. And this site really took off during COVID. Why? Just like us, all the wards and steakhouses shut down. But unlike a lot of our Christian churches where they came up with alternative means of getting God's word out there through live stream or other methods, they didn't come up with anything. The LDS Church did nothing. And they were locked down way, way longer than we were. So what are the Mormons going to do? They went on the internet, just like we all do. And they started looking at what was out there and realizing that there was a little bit of a difference in the Christian websites that they were coming across versus their faith, their Mormon faith. This particular website really started getting a lot of activity, and it has just grown exponentially. They get thousands of hits every week. There are volunteers that work with this website to engage in conversations via email and also chat. So we arrived on Saturday. We had to be there by 4 o'clock to check into our hotel and then also to have dinner on our own. Training actually started at 6 o'clock that evening. And to start us all off, it was a really great presentation that was given to us by a couple. They are ex-Mormons. They were raised in the church, very, very devout in their faith. Their names were Eric and Emily, and Eric even was a missionary. And so it was really great to get their perspective of the culture of Mormons and how they processed through to becoming Christians. It's not something that happens overnight. It's really going to take years once that gospel seed is planted. We also learned that night that we were going to be going to Provo. Provo, why there? versus, let's say, Salt Lake City, it's 97% Mormon population down there. So the chances of us reaching a Mormon when we knock on the door was much, much higher. Salt Lake City, in comparison, only has about 50% Mormon population. We also watched a video that evening, kind of giving us a taste of the difference between what's called Mormonese and the words that we as Christians understand. For instance, like grace. Their idea of what grace is and what our idea of grace is vastly different. But if you don't have that understanding, when you're talking to them, you're just going to be talking past each other because you're going to think that you're really on the same page when in fact you're really not. We also went over how they were going to lay out our time there. Down in Provo, they had divided the area into neighborhoods. The neighborhoods were anywhere from, I'm trying to think, we had, I think, like 13 or 14 neighborhoods. Not that that the people in our week were going to hit all of those neighborhoods. It was to be divvied out between the 2 weeks. We would be, by Sunday night, they figured we would be able to figure out who we wanted in our group, and then we would be assigned a number. That number would correlate with the neighborhood that we would be going to. So, before we got there, there was a lot of advertising that Truth and Love Ministry did. So these cards were sent out. They arrived approximately 4 to 5 days before we arrived. These cards were actually very beneficial because we're going to be using those to be able to start conversations at the door. On the back side of the card was this particular Bible verse. This is from Matthew 5:48. You'll notice that it is done in the King James Version because that is the Bible that they're going to reference. They believe that is if you're going to use a Bible, that'll be the true Bible to use. So Pastor Parsons did some demonstrations as to how we were going to use these cards at the door. And then after we did that, we ended up getting put into pairs so that we could role play. The role play is very important because you start to build your confidence in how you're going to be getting the messages across. So how do we do that? We practiced with the idea of when we come up to the door, we are to introduce ourselves as Christian missionaries with Be Perfect Ministry, and that we were out there in the neighborhood that day for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons was to see how good our advertising was. And so we would hold the card up to them and we'd say, have you seen this? Have you in the mail recently? They would say either yes or no. It really didn't matter what they said. If they did say no, we could always say, well, did you see anything in the social media? And again, yes or no. The whole point of the card is to get that conversation started. So as you saw previously, this was kind of our go-to. Some groups and pairs would use this part of the card, but most of us use the other because that Bible passage is very well known amongst Mormons. So when we would ask them if they had seen this passage before, it let us know if we were actually really talking to a Mormon because they know this by heart and they can tell you that it's Matthew 5:48. So so then we would ask them if they'd seen it. If they said no, then we would know right then and there that probably they were not Mormons. And that would help get us geared into a whole different conversation with them. Once they read that passage, then our next go-to was, what does the word perfect mean? And then that would really get the conversation going, which it was just really, really pretty neat. So after we got to play with each other in the pairs there, trying to hone down some of our skills, then Pastor Parsons had us go break into groups of 3 to 4 people so that we could practice being the couple coming to the door, because we're always going to be in pairs, and knocking on that door. When we went out, what we were being told was when we went out as pairs, one person would knock on the door and the other person would have a clipboard. The clipboard was for us to have extra material that we could hand out. Sometimes they'd say, well, no, I never even saw the flyer. And so we would usually try to leave them with one of those when we left, because on that flyer is the Be Ye Perfect website that they can access. The other reason for the clipboard is we had on there a sheet that you could put down how many extended witnesses that we had, opportunities that we had, and if we were able to plant a gospel seed. Obviously, we're not going to be writing all this stuff down at the door. So once we had our conversations, we would try to find someplace a little ways away from the house, and then we would make our documentations there. So as we were practicing our skills, Pastor Parsons would come along and he would critique us, encourage us, give us pointers on how best to move on. By the end of Saturday, we were pretty much exhausted and couldn't wait to go to bed. But the next day was a really great day. We went down to Prince of Peace. It's a church, a Lutheran church down there in the southern part of Salt Lake City. This year is their 50th anniversary. So after we got done worshiping, we had an opportunity to get our feet wet a little bit because guess what? They wanted us to go out and canvass. But this was a really easy canvass. All we had to do is put flyers out on the doors. The reason we were doing this was because they wanted to have a big celebration and invite the community to that celebration towards the end of the week. We went back to the church afterwards, and the congregation, they just gave us a wonderful lunch in thank you for our efforts. And yeah, you guessed it. After lunch, where did we go? Back to the hotel and more training. Finally, the big day arrives. It's Monday morning. We're all very nervous. And we were kind of sharing that at breakfast that morning. But we're also very excited. We've had the training. This is what we came here to do. And let's see how that's going to go. So, like I said earlier, Provo is south of Salt Lake. It is about a 40-minute drive. So after breakfast, we would get in the cars and head on down. We already knew from the night before, because our groups had been formed, as to what neighborhood we were going to. We would drive into the neighborhood. We would scout it out, kind of see how to lay that out as far as our pairs going out and knocking on doors. We'd find a place where we could park the car that was central so anybody could get back to it. And then we always, every morning, we did a group prayer, asking the Holy Spirit to please help us with our mission, and especially please help us when we were at the door talking. I have to say, the majority of the doors that were open to us, the people there are very, very gracious. Even if they didn't want to talk to us, they were, really sorry, got stuff to do today, but they would thank us for coming to the door. It was just amazing. And we were told by Pastor Parsons, well, it's because if you really think about it, just about everybody in the Mormon faith, they either have a loved one who has been a missionary, they know of someone, they themselves have been missionaries. And it's kind of like, this is how they would like their missionaries to be received at the door, rather than a door being slammed in their faces. So that was really pretty cool. So I mentioned earlier a little bit about extended conversations, that we were supposed to document those things. An extended conversation was anything that was over 5 minutes. Some of these conversations went as long as an hour and a half. Seriously. Some of these were just amazing. I would say probably a greater percentage were probably between 20 and 25 minutes. It's just crazy. So if we encountered somebody who, or a couple that seemed like they were kind of on the fence with their faith and they're starting to question about and looking into Christianity, we would leave them with this book, God, the Ultimate Humanitarian. This was put together by Pastor Kerr, and it's a great resource for those who are questioning the Mormon faith. They can get a lot of answers in that book. We also had these little itty bitty, it was amazing for as small as these little books were. The print actually was pretty good size, and it was just a compilation of the Gospels. We had tons of those. So if we did have an extended conversation, we could say, hey, thank you for your time today, and give them one of those as a gift. If we had someone who truly was, they're like moving away from the Mormon faith, really looking hard at Christianity, we would ask them if we could leave Pastor Parsons' card with them. And oftentimes they would say yes. Matter of fact, there were enough cards given out that we had 6 people at the end of the week in our group that wanted Pastor Parsons to actually come and visit them. And that happened, he did that on Friday afternoon. So what was our day like? We started in the morning, like I said earlier, with breakfast. The hotel provided, I mean, this is not just a little continental breakfast. This was a full-on breakfast, a big, beautiful buffet. We would have our breakfast, and then we would get into our groups, and we would head down to Provo. We would spend 2.5 hours in the morning. We had a set lunchtime that we would need to come for lunch. The lunches were set up in the parks. There were a lot of parks in the area that we were that was kind of centrally located to the groups going out. Obviously, if you're at the door and you're having a good conversation, you're not going to go, oh, sorry, it's lunchtime, we're going to head on out of here. You would try to finish those conversations. So you might be a little bit later getting to the lunch spot. Here we are having lunch. Not only did we eat lunch, but we shared experiences of the day. Monday morning, that first Monday morning, I don't think there were many of us that were jumping up because we had a lot of people there that were really nervous about speaking in front of others and not so sure about wanting to share. But I guarantee you by the end of the week, everybody was wanting to share their experiences. So after lunch, we would go back out and pound the pavement for another 2.5 to 3 hours. After which, then we would head back to the hotel for dinner. We would share stories during that time frame as well. And then Pastor Parsons usually presented a video. It's kind of cool videos that he had set up. They were either parables or pieces of scripture that would kind of put an emphasis on some of those words that are the conflict that we have with Mormons, where we think that we're on the same page, but when in fact we are totally talking different things. So it really helped us to see these videos and give us a little more information to use at the door. I know here in Arizona it's kind of hard to imagine, but in Utah it doesn't get dark until 9:30, 10 o'clock. So we had a lot. So we had a lot of time after we did all this other stuff to actually be able to enjoy some of the evening. So some of the folks who play games, the group on the right, they're waiting for their ride. We're headed out to the mountains because where the mountains are, it's about a 25-minute drive from the hotel. And a lot of our kids, some of these kids are from Nebraska. They haven't even seen a mountain. So this was, and it was so beautiful last year. It was beautiful, lush green. We're in the high 70s, low 80s, and yet the mountains were all snow-capped. So these kids are fascinated with being able to get up there and get into the snow. And here's one of our hikes here that we did. It was one of the first nights. That's Bridal Veil Falls. Easy to get to, and it's about a 1.5 mile hike. So we were out there pounding the pavement on Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday came. Wednesday was our free day, and we were encouraged to go down to the Temple Square. And down at Temple Square, you can see in the left-hand picture, that is the original Mormon temple that was constructed at the time of Brigham Young. So you're looking at the late 1800s. What they're doing there, they started this in during COVID. There have been increasing number of earthquakes north of Salt Lake, and a little bit stronger earthquakes. And so they had real concerns about what was going to happen to this building. So what they've done is they've lifted it up and they're putting, I can't remember what they're called, but they're like the rollers that they put in under buildings in California so that the building will actually sway with the earthquake rather than crumble. One of the things that we also did while we were there is that we took a tour with Mormon missionary ladies. If you look to the left, you'll see the ladies over to the side. One of the things that they took us to see was the tabernacle. Amazing place. That organ, the original pieces of that were installed in the late 1800s. There was a gentleman there that actually played the organ for us. It was just really, really incredible. The other thing that's fascinating about that tabernacle is the acoustics. So one of the ladies went up to the podium and dropped a pin, not a pen, a pin on the podium, and you could hear that noise that sound all the way to the back of the tabernacle. So they really don't need mics in there. They truly don't. The ladies there, they finished up their tour with us, really discussing their faith. And with a very big central piece of that being Jesus. And I guarantee you that if you walked away from listening to them and didn't know any better, you would definitely believe that they're Christian. And that is actually a problem that we're seeing. A lot of Mormons now, because of COVID and access to other materials, they are starting to really leave their Mormon faith. The problem with that is that they end up being atheists. And this is why. They have made Jesus really a central piece of their faith. So when they walk away from Mormonism, they walk away from Jesus as well. So it's really important for we as Christians to try to catch them in that transition period so that they have a better understanding of what Jesus is all about. Wednesday afternoon was a day of leisure. We didn't do any training that day in the evening or afternoon. So some people just kind of lounged around. There was a group that went up to Park City ski area because there's great shops up there and a lot of fun, outdoor fun activities. Some people went to the Great Salt Lake. And then we had some kids, that's when they went up to the lake. They went up and Pastor Parsons took a group of kids up onto one of the mountains there, and they did a really extensive hike that day. So I talked about the schools. The only school, for some reason, that I can remember is East Lake High. But there were other groups that came from the schools. These are two groups that were there. And we also had some members from the congregations that came. We also had some couples that came, and then some individuals like myself that was there as well. Just a quick slide here. These are the two groups. The one on your far right is from group 1, and the group on the left is from the second week. So what did we end up accomplishing? As you can see, we had 72 Christian missionaries out pounding the pavement there during those 2 weeks. We had 883 gospel seeds planted, 489 extended witnessing conversations, and 67 Christian encouragements. What I mean by a Christian encouragement, the majority of those were those who were ex-Mormons. They had converted to Christianity. And I'll tell you, they were just thrilled to death to see us at the door. Especially if you think about it again, being in Provo, and most of the people you know are Mormon. These people are really lonely. Their family, they're ostracized from their family, from their friends, from their neighbors. So we would leave them with some information to try and help them in their new faith. A small percentage of those were the unchurched that we encountered. And for me, that was probably the high point of my week. I encountered a gentleman who he had been raised in a church. In his teenage years, he had moved away from his faith, actually had moved away from the area, and he had been living in Oregon for a while. And he had come back to Salt Lake area. He was in Provo primarily because that's where his job was. And so we ended up having a wonderful conversation. It was about 35 minutes long. I don't know, I just felt so great about it. He was willing to take all the material that I wanted to give him, gave him Pastor Parsons' card, as you know, if you think you want to find a church, you know, because obviously we want to direct him to a Wells church, but at least he'd have some information there. So one thing that really kind of struck me during my time there is how fear can keep us from doing many things in our lives, including, you know, sharing our faith and getting the gospel out there. Right now, if you had told me 6 years ago that I would be standing in front of a group of people talking, I would have said you're crazy. Because I was scared to death to do this. But what I found out in the years that I've been here with all of you, and you're so warm and welcoming, it has helped me a lot. And that's what we discovered when we were there that week. When you're there and you're sharing in these experiences, everybody, not just me, but everybody just really grew, not only in their faith, but in that confidence of being able to share the gospel message. Especially to watch. We had a couple that were there, that this is something that they wanted to do. They were probably, I'd say, late 60s. They always wanted to be able to witness and had just been afraid. And because of another couple encouraging them to come with them to this, they had that opportunity. And to see them change, to see the kids. Our youngest gal, she had just finished her freshman year of high school, very timid, very shy young lady. And by the end of the week, she was just, you could hardly shut her up. It was just so empowering, this experience. So as I'm starting to come to my conclusion here, that also directs me to Mormon missionaries. Eric, the gentleman I had mentioned earlier, he had talked about his experiences as a missionary, and I learned a lot. For one thing, they only get about 2 weeks training before they go out. They will be assigned with someone that they do not know. They will be with that person for about 6 weeks. And at that time, then they get switched out to be with someone else. They are out there pounding the pavement 6 days a week. They get 1 day off to do laundry and some personal things. Having been out there pounding the pavement, the little bit that I did gave me a great appreciation for what these guys do. And, we have couples that are out there, they're missionaries, and also the ladies, but, I think we primarily see the guys out there. Another thing that I learned from Eric is they, at no time are they ever to be left alone. So when they're with this person, where they're living, they can never have the bathroom door closed. They can never have the bedroom door closed. It always has to be cracked open. The reason being is because the Mormon church does know that they're out there encountering Christians, and they don't want those thoughts to start mulling around in their heads and kind of changing their perspective, shall we say. And so if they can't ever be with someone they're comfortable with, they can't ever be alone, less chance that they're going to be trying to reach out to other people and say, hey, I'm starting to question things. They're not going to have that ability to do that. So, in saying, I really, really strongly encourage you folks, please, if Mormon missionaries come to your door, open that door and invite them in. Whether you invite them in for a drink or a snack, listen to what they have to say. Find out how long they're going to be in the neighborhood. Maybe they're going to be there. They're just starting out. So they might be there for 4 to 6 weeks, which gives you great opportunity to build on that relationship. Invite them back for lunch, for dinner, for whatever, just to get them back and engage them in conversation. And at some point, you'll be able to share a gospel message with them. It also gives you the ability, if they are going to be there for a while, so often we go, what was that Bible verse I wanted to share? Well, if they're coming back, it gives you time to kind of look that up, and you're getting to know them, building that relationship, and you'll be able to see how you can use those pieces of scripture to get that out there to them. So that kind of brings me towards the end of my little spiel here. Does anybody have any questions? I'll try to answer them as best as I can. Yes, Lois.
Probably said, and I was passing out papers. Where did you stay? You were in a hotel where?
We're in a hotel that's kind of very central to where everything that we wanted to do. It's about a 15-minute ride from the airport. So it's kind of on a little, if you're looking at the downtown part of Salt Lake City, you're going to be a little bit further west and south of there. Any other questions? Yes, Nancy.
I think that's really interesting. I never thought about it. When somebody comes to your house who is a Mormon or somebody else, rather than being, oh, brother, closing the door or not going to the door, that you kind of reverse it on, that you could kind of, find out more. That's really interesting. I never thought about that.
Yes, it gives you great opportunity. And something I did neglect to mention, but I'm sure you guys have figured that out already, just from my talk about my unchurched fella. The skills that we learned there and techniques are applicable to anybody that you want to witness to. So just to take that. Yes, Gary?
You talk about Mormon missionaries. When I was growing up, I had many relatives and friends that were Mormons, and the church required a certain period of time mission work.
Mhm.
Is that what you're talking about, or are these full-time?
No,
ministers?
these are the young people. Most of these are young people that are out on their 2-year mission journey.
Okay.
There are retired couples that also do this as well, but the majority of them are younger people. Stan?
It's interesting because many times taking a county vehicle from downtown to the county shops and going around Dang Mountain, you see a couple of young lads on bicycles with the dark pants, the white shirt, the tie. And one time the other driver said, "Oh, those are very righteous people." Just because they're on mission, they were righteous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Anybody else? Gary?
What do the Mormons believe grace means?
Grace is, for them, it's something that helps them in order to work for their salvation. They see Jesus as a savior in the sense that he is their creditor. And so, yes, he paid for their sins, but now they have to pay him back with good works, and they need to be perfect works. So it puts a lot of stress on their lives because, of course, we can never be perfect. And when they start having doubts and questioning, Emily was talking about her shelf. They are told by their elders and by the prophet. The prophet is the president of the LDS Church. They believe he truly is a prophet. That you're to take those doubts and just put those on a shelf. At some point in time, whether it be here in this life or in the afterlife, you can work on those doubts and those things. So, Beth?
What was the name of that book that you gave that you could get to them?
It is called God, the Ultimate Humanitarian. Mhm. Kathy?
Did you have anyone that you talked to that they were trying to turn the tables on you?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Especially, we had a couple of people that ended up at a bishop's house. There were 2 instances of that, and you bet. Yeah.
What was that like for you?
For me, it shows you how you can get into a debate so easy. Because we would continually try to point them back to, what it meant by when Jesus said it is finished, what it meant by being perfect. And we would keep going back and forth on that. And some of the folks, and the majority of those folks that aren't willing to listen are actually the very wealthy. Because in their mind, they've done everything right, and they're on their way to the celestial kingdom, which is their highest level of heaven. So it was much harder to bridge that gap with those folks.
I have one more question.
Sure.
When you were in training, were you given more background about exactly what they believe?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, yeah. You definitely get that. And you'd really get that from actually the couple that Emily and Eric that spoke to us. I mean, they really gave us a good sense of what their life was like as a Mormon versus where it is today as well. Bob?
Just for information, I think it was Karis wrote the book, Pastor Karis, The Truth and Love of Mormons.
Yes.
Now, at the back of that book is a set of terms with the Mormon definition. That's a reprint of their book.
Yes.
That's not his wording. That's the Mormon's wording of that definition.
That's absolutely correct, Bob. And that's what he learned. That's how Truth and Love Ministries really came about, because he started learning the Mormonese and how to best talk with them. Any further questions? Yes?
Comment. You wish they'd change their name to the Church of Joseph Smith. Latter-day God. That'd be very plain.
Yes. Well, again, like I said, with those ladies, I mean, they really have a focus on Jesus. So, yes, sir.
Just, and this is just a sort of, kind of goes with it, it's not the same thing, but anybody else who wants a chance to just experience this on a much smaller scale, coming up will be the Tucson Festival of Books, at which we'll have a booth and people come by and you get a chance to interact with them. Bale Fest was just yesterday, gave us another chance to get our name out there. So when you see some of those things and saying, hey, we're looking for some volunteers to staff it, you might want to consider that. There will always be someone there that knows and has done it before, so great people to be with.
Thank you very much, Paul. I greatly appreciate that.
Holly and I were there together, yes.
All righty, before I do my last little, I've got a slightly, little 2-minute long video clip I'm going to leave you with. Gives you it's kind of hard a little bit to hear, but it gives you a different perspective than my perspective. But before I do that, how can I be up here in front of you without one of these? So, this sign-up sheet is not for you to feel obligated to or committed to. This sign-up sheet is just if you would put your name down if you think that you might possibly remotely be interested in maybe going next year in June to learn how to witness. Again, let me emphasize, it's just suggestion, yes. And what that does is it helps us, the pastors and myself, be able to plan, because if there is interest here that you might consider doing this, then we can start the planning for that. And if I don't get anybody, well, sorry, it's your loss. It was a great experience. All right, so I'm going to start over here and send this around. I'll bring that video clip up, and you can listen to that, and then I think that will take us to the end of our time. Oops, yep. He told me. I got to go here.
Now, there's one more slide.
One more slide? Oh, thank you.
Now click it.
I'm going to need your help, sir. There we go. Got it.
Yep.
Okay, when we were introduced to this trip, we were very nervous, like the whole meetings, like, we didn't get super nervous, and we were pretty excited for the most part. But like when the time came, we were kind of sketched out by the person neighborhood we were in. And then like the night before our first day out there, we were just overcomplicated and talking about it for so long. We just didn't really know what to expect until we got out there. And then it was our second day out, we met this one elderly lady, and she wanted nothing to do with us. At first she was welcoming, and she found out we were Christian missionaries. She very strong LDS woman, and it was pretty much almost debating, but we weren't talking at all. The first thing she told us is we were about to say something. No, it's fine for her to talk. And upset about that, we kind of just took it as like, okay, whatever. We did our part, like the Holy Spirit can do the rest. And we went there to debate and plant seeds. And there was this one guy that was our first day back. We didn't catch his name, but he was youngest, elderly man as well. But we had a down-to-earth conversation, probably 20 minutes, just talking. Not necessarily about religion, but just about life. And for that, we got intertwining and stuff, and we just talked. And I do think we kind of sparked something in him because he was talking, but then towards the end he was just kind of, like can't argue with that, and you got one there. So it was overall just an amazing experience. It was very, very nerve-wracking. Still, last day, we nervous walking around. But just some of the people you meet, it's insane now. You had people our age, older, younger, just we're all one big family now. It's just really refreshing what happens around here and stuff.
Alrighty. Well, I just want to thank all of you for allowing me to give this presentation, and I just hope you do consider it's whether you want to do it next year, but at some point, I mean, the skills that you learn is just so empowering. So anyhow, thank you all very much, and may you have a blessed day.